You didn't work this hard to feel stuck. You've done the work, you've built a solid career, but something lately, it just feels off, right? You're not failing, you're just not really going anywhere. You've hit that point where things just feel stuck. Let's talk about why and what to do next. Welcome to Control Your Career. I'm Julia Toothaker, your strategic career consultant, and I am so glad that you're here. This podcast is all about helping ambitious professionals take control of their career with clarity and confidence. Now, before we dive in, I want to make sure that you stay with me until the very end because I have a big announcement that you are not going to want to miss. I've been hinting around if you've been following me, but I really want to share that in this episode toward the end. This season, we are going straight into real challenges that professionals face in their career. Things like stalled growth, difficult managers, career transitions, burnout, and everything in between. These are the issues that my clients bring to me every day, and they're probably the same things that you have been wrestling with too. The difference here is going to be how we approach them. I'm not just going to give you one size fits all advice or tell you what worked for me. We're going to be using my Control Your Career process, a practical and flexible framework designed to help you apply the conversation to your specific situation. And we're starting today with one of the most common pain points, feeling stuck. That moment when you look around and you think, I should be further along by now, or I'm not sure if this is even what I want anymore. That's what I hear from a lot of my clients. It happens to almost everyone at some point in their career, and it can show up in different ways. Boredom, second guessing your path, or feeling disconnected from your own success. That also happens a lot with my clients. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through each of the 5 stages of my Control Your Career process using the feeling stuck as our lens. And by the end of this episode, you will have a clearer picture about what is going on and some first steps that you can take to move forward. So let's get into it. So what does feeling stuck look like? I already shared a couple of things, but some common signs that you're going to want to look for is you're not growing. You're not failing. There's not growth. You're almost in a state of stagnation, right? You might be successful on paper. So you've had those, position changes and you've moved up within your career. You've had promotions. But for whatever reason, right now, you're starting to feel a little bit disconnected, maybe to the work or to the company. You might feel bored. That's a very common sign. And in some cases, you're just questioning your path completely. You might be unsure of what's next because a lot of times that boredom can lead us to a state of confusion in our career and trying to figure out what's going on. So one thing I want to do is let you know that this is so common. And I know it doesn't feel like it when we're going through it because we feel like we're on an island. But this is a really common point that a lot of people get to in their career. And this can happen too, especially after we've had some big milestone things happen or just big life changes. So maybe you did get a promotion, but this promotion isn't working well with you for some reason, right? Maybe you've been in a position or a company for a really long time and you're just trying to figure out what that next move is. You feel like you've been there for too long. And then again, life changes, right? I know you all have heard me talk about my big life change, right? I lost my dad, I had my son, and lost my mom all within an 18-month period of time. And I'm going to tell you that made me question everything. And it led me down a path that I did not expect at all, which is me here owning a business, having a podcast, doing all these things that I never thought I was going to do. Now, I'm not saying that's the path that you need to take, but that's the path that I ended up taking after doing some of the work that I'm going to be talking about today. And here's the other thing to understand is if you are feeling stuck, it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you've even done anything wrong. Sometimes it's just a state that we get into. It's something that happens that gets triggered by something. So again, this is all very normal. And now we want to walk through what it's going to take to help us figure out how to move forward. Before we get there, though, I want to share one thing. And I know for those of you that have followed me for a long time, this will come as no surprise, but I'm not a quick fix coach. Okay. I am not somebody that's going to tell you like, oh yeah, do this, do this. This is going to be the thing that makes you the most happy. Here's the 3 steps to whatever. That's not my jam. Okay. So one thing that you need to realize is that quick fixes are not necessarily going to work in this scenario. So what does that look like? You might want to switch jobs. That might not be the best option at first. You might go for a promotion thinking that things are going to change. You are likely chasing or want to chase some type of external validation, right? But that's not really what you need when the fix needs to be about your internal misalignment, right? And this looks different for everyone, so it might not be that, but I just have to put it out there. One of the pieces of advice that I hear a lot is just push through. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. That's not sustainable. I think you've probably been doing that up until this point. And so now we have to have a conversation around, I've pushed through and it's not working. So what are the next steps, right? And real progress is going to require reflection and intentional action, which is a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that you're not getting a quick fix from me. This is a process. And this is something that I'm going to walk you through. Now, one thing that I recommend if you have the ability to is pull out a sheet of paper or open notes on your computer so that you can not only jot down the questions and prompts, but maybe some of the thoughts as I'm going through this as well, because I think that'll help you if this is something that you are dealing with. Okay, so let's briefly talk about the framework and then we will get into it. So the Control Your Career framework has 5 stages. The first is realistic reality, and this is where we are digging into what is actually going on. Then we have identity analysis, which is basically looking at your personality and preferences. And this is where we figure out some of the alignment pieces. And then we go into purpose-driven plan. This is your goals. And again, I use the term purpose-driven because we want your goals to be intentional and we want to understand the purpose behind them. And then we go into initiate action. I think this is where a lot of people fall off. We talk about like, oh, this sounds good, or I fit in here. We might create a plan, but then the action piece is missing. So we're going to talk about what that can look like in terms of feeling stuck. And then high impact habits. This one isn't always going to be the most applicable to people. It just depends on the scenario that we're dealing with. But I always want you to think about, are there habits that you need to start or are there habits that you need to end? And how can we modify that around the topic that we are discussing? And so once again, I want to remind you that this season is going to be going through this process with the lens of whatever challenge or opportunity that we are talking about. And so today we are talking about feeling stuck. So let's start with stage 1, realistic reality. So what are we asking in this stage? We are asking, what is actually going on? What is the reality of your situation? You heard me talk earlier about big life changes. So that's one of the things that you're going to want to evaluate. Has something big happened recently that has thrown you into a place of feeling stuck or questioning what you're doing? So let's start there. Then we want to go into, if that doesn't apply to you and you're like, nothing has happened. I just feel stuck. I feel stagnant. Let's look at what has happened in your job in the last 6 months to a year. What are some wins that you've had? Or have you had any wins, right? Like, has anything positive happened in your work? What are some losses? What are some things that happen that maybe were challenging? A lot of times when we go through a really challenging time at work, whatever that looks like, it's going to be unique for everyone. But when we go through that, it can really deplete our confidence. And so then that can transition into, okay, I don't know if this is the right place. I don't know if this is the right career for me. And we start to question things. And then that's how we get stuck, right? One of the other things I want to bring up that sometimes we don't always think about in terms of our career are personal responsibilities. So, are there things happening at home that are impacting work? And sometimes this can look like maybe a new family situation. Maybe you're a caregiver now. That's a huge impact. I have actually podcast episodes on that. Maybe you've had a health scare or a health situation. Maybe it's yours. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe you just got married. Maybe you just got divorced or you have a kid now. Like, there are so many family and personal things that will impact what happens to us at work. And it changes how we view our work. I know that's some of what happened to me. I realized when I had my son and my parents passed, I was like, oh, I want my time back. I don't want to be in this full-time situation, giving all of my energy and myself to my job. And I was a workaholic, so that was a big switch for me. And so owning my own business gave me not only time to heal from grief, although you don't ever really fully heal from grief, but it gave me time with my son. It allowed me to work through those initial feelings of intense grief. And then it allowed me to be flexible with my schedule. And it's something that I really love. And so that is what worked for me. I also want you to look at your support system. Sometimes when things shift and change, especially in our personal lives, our support system maybe isn't there the same way that we would like. So let's say that you had to make a move for work or your significant other forced to move. Now you're in a new place. You don't have a support system in life, right? And so you're struggling in that way. And then that can also impact your career. Similarly, in your career, if you don't have the right support systems, maybe your manager isn't as supportive as you need, or you don't have a good relationship with coworkers. Maybe you need a mentor. Like, there are so many things that we can get support from in our careers that if we don't have them, it can be really frustrating and it can lead us to question things because our brains are kind of our own worst enemy in those situations. And then one thing I have to bring up, because a lot of times when we have some big shifts and changes, it impacts our financial situation. So are your finances a pressure that is impacting the work that you do, right? Maybe you don't feel like your career is enough and it's making you feel stuck because you don't know which way to go. Okay, so you want to really look at what is impacting you. What is your brain telling you? What are you feeling? Where is this feeling of stuckness coming from? And really dig into that. And that's going to take some time, and it's going to really force you to look at yourself in a different light. You're really going to have to strip back pieces to be able to have that honest conversation with yourself. And one thing to think about too is it might not actually be the job. For some it is. For some, it's not a good fit in terms of the actual work and the job itself. But for some of you, it could be the culture, right? It might be the culture of the organization that doesn't work, or the culture of the team that's not working. And it could just be the season of life that you are in. So are you in a particular season where, you just are something's missing, you need something else? What is actually going on? So when we talk about the prompt for realistic reality, the question is always going to be, what is going on? And what are those deeper pieces that we need to pick apart to understand the nuance of our particular situation? All right, let's move on to stage 2, which is identity analysis. So this is looking at your personality and your preferences, and are they aligning, right? So in realistic reality, we dug deep. Now we're looking at, do we have some mismatch? And some of that could have come out in your realistic reality, and you're now making the connection in identity analysis. Okay, so we want to look at Who are you now and how do you work best? And some of those things might be out of alignment in this current season. So, a couple of things that I want you to evaluate for yourself, specifically around getting stuck. I want you to look at your current values. Are they being met? Is something being ignored? Do you need something different that maybe you didn't need 6 months ago? I actually have a values assessment. I will make sure to link it into the blog post for this episode. It's a free resource and it's something that I have all of my clients take because I want to know where you are right now in terms of your values. And so that's something that I think is really helpful because a lot of times we're missing something or there's some kind of misalignment between the career and the values in this season. Then I want you to look at energy. And I know for some of you, it's like, oh, energy, like, what does that even mean? I want you to look at what parts of your day, specifically within your job, bring you joy or excite you or that you feel really confident about. And then what are the things that you're doing that drain you? And so one of the activities that I think is really great is to actually each day jot down notes after you've completed something or after you've had a meeting and track that for about 2 weeks and then look at, what is going on. So what is draining you and what is lifting you up? And that might give you some insight into what is going on. You might be in situations where you're being drained too much and you need to make some adjustments. And then I want you to look at your work style. This is something that I like to do with clients as well. You need to figure out the work style and environment that works best for you. And you might not be in it. And that might be part of some of this stuckness feeling. And so when we talk about work style, do you crave independence? Do you want collaboration? Do you need to be creative? Do you like structure? So there's a lot of different things that can go into work style, but if something isn't working right for you throughout the day, what is it? I know that I've been in situations where there was no structure and I had to build that structure in order to feel better, in order to feel confident about what I was doing. And that really helped me. So really figuring out that style is going to be helpful for you. And then I want you to look at leadership and management dynamics within your current organization. This is really niche, but I think when it comes to feeling stuck, it can have a really big impact on us. So look at your relationship with your managers and leaders in your organization. Has there been some kind of shift? And if you're stuck, it's probably a negative shift, if I had to be honest. And so if it's negative, what is going on? What can you control versus what is out of your control when it comes to those relationships? Sometimes we just don't gel with people. So maybe there's been a leadership change and our personality doesn't get along with their personality. So how can we, work within that as much as possible? So one of the things and the key points that I want you to walk away from this section with is that feeling stuck comes from misalignment a lot of times between you and your environment. So I focus mostly on work context. There's also life context with this as well. I'm not going to go in depth with that, but with work context, I would definitely be looking through that and make sure that if there is a misalignment, you have identified what it is. This is also really important to identify before you jump ship because you don't want to take this misalignment into a new position or a new situation and end up right back where you are. Okay, stage 3 is purpose-driven plan. So now we are going to talk about goals. So you've gone through these first 2 stages and you've really dug into the meat of what is going on. So with most of my clients, when I've gone through those first 2 stages, we've now identified possibly new challenges or we've clarified what is going on. And that allows us to create more intentional or purpose-driven goals. Okay. So I want you to think about what you have already thought through with stage 1 and 2. And I want you to ask yourself these questions. I want you to define what progress or fulfillment is going to mean or look like for you right now. So obviously when you're feeling stuck, a lot of times something is missing. So what do you believe that you need to help fill that gap? And again, reflect back on stage 1 and 2, and you might be able to find some clarity in that reflection. Really identify what brought on the stuckness, okay? What was that thing that made you go, oh, I just don't feel good about this, right? It could be this episode. It could be, something in social media or something that you just felt. A lot of times it's going to be some of those things I mentioned in the beginning: boredom, misalignment, lack of growth, that just triggers us to go, oh, I think something is wrong. What is actually wrong? So really identify what that is. And then let's be honest. Be honest with ourselves. Are you craving a challenge? Do you need more balance in your career and life? Do you need recognition? That's something that I know a lot of people don't get in their careers. And so is that something that would help you? Or is there something else? Right? So really identifying what is the goal as you see it right now. What would help you for the next couple of months? If you could get from where you are now to X, what is X? And try to identify that for yourself. One thing that I want to make sure that you don't do is I don't want you to measure yourself and your career against somebody else. A lot of times we look at people who are in a similar field to us and think, oh, I wish I was doing what they were doing. I wish that I was where they are, or look at all these things that they've done. I haven't done that, and I'm already here in my life and career. Don't do that. We are all on our own journey. We are all doing our own thing. If you need to restart something, if you need to switch careers, it doesn't matter. If you're 45 and you feel like you need to make a career switch, make a career switch. It's not as uncommon as you would think, right? But we have to understand where it's coming from. So don't measure yourself against other people. Figure out what works for you. That's part of the whole point of my Control Your Career process, is you are identifying what works for you. You're not looking at the quick fixes. You're not looking at the generic advice. You're identifying it for yourself. All right, let's talk about action. This is going to be stage 4, initiate action. This is where I see people struggle the most in their career journey, in career development. So here's the thing. You're stuck. One of the things that's going to get you out of your stuckness is movement. It's taking action. Even just finding the clarity, starting at stage 1, you have to take action to answer some of those prompts and questions that I brought up. So this whole process really is you taking action, but this action in stage 4 is really more specific and guided toward the goals that you set in the previous stage. Or goal should be one goal, but you might have a couple depending on what's going on. So a couple of actions that could be helpful related to stuckness. And again, this is going to vary depending on the goals that you set, but you might need to have a conversation. So you might need to have a conversation with your manager. You might need to have a conversation with a coworker or a peer. Honestly, you might need to have a conversation with someone like me. It just depends on where you're at. But a lot of times we create these stories in our heads when it comes to our career. And if we just sit down and have a conversation, usually with our manager, we get a lot of clarity from that conversation. So really consider that. If you're bored, right? Consider taking a stretch project if you have time to do that, or volunteer for something, right? Join a professional association or volunteer for something within your organization if you have those types of groups. Just do something to reinvigorate you, whether it's work related or even in your personal life. Which leads me to the next one, which is to revisit an old skill, hobby, or area of interest. A lot of times when we're feeling stuck, it's because there's a lack of creativity in some part of our life or career. And so if you have something to look forward to at the end of the workday or on the weekend, that is yours, right? I know a lot of us have different responsibilities and families and things like that, but that doesn't mean that we can't find time for ourselves to, put some energy into a skill and something that we can grow and feel confident about. So don't underestimate those hobbies. They are very much needed. So one thing with action is you don't need to take all the action all at the same time. Choose one, maybe two things that you know you can complete, you know that you can get done, and go and do that. Start small and then keep adding an action as you complete them related to your goal, of course. All right, high impact habits. This is going to be stage 5. This is where we ask ourselves, how do we prevent getting stuck again? Okay. So there are some habits that you can build in depending on where you're at. Habits to me happen after we have identified our goal and taken some action. So I would not start habits right away. We've got to get you into actually taking action before we start building new habits. So here are some to think about in terms of being stuck and what can we do to help prevent that from happening? One is monthly career check-ins. And this is with yourself. You could do it with me if you wanted to. That would be fine. I would love that. But monthly career check-ins, you want to look at your progress. You want to look at your goals and the actions that you've taken and ask yourself what has worked well and where, do I need some extra support or where do I need to maybe take a little bit more action? Set up weekly priorities that support the larger goal, right? And so when we identify that goal, we should be identifying some actions around that, right? And so then each week you want to sit down with yourself and go, okay, what can I do this week that's a little bit different? What actions can I take? And is that going to help me get to this main goal? And then don't come for me on this, but networking. You need to talk to people. I think sometimes we feel like, again, we're on an island, and anytime that you can get out of yourself and go talk to people in your field is always so helpful. There does not have to be an agenda around it. It could just be somebody that you have a good relationship with that does something similar to you, that you can sit down and talk about what's going on and just swap stories about the work that you're doing or what's going on in your field, but something to just help you feel connected outside of your, current work situation. All right. So one of the things with high impact habits is consistency, but again, do not overdo it. Start simple, start easy, and then build when you believe that you have it. All right. So when you feel stuck, just know that it's not the end of the road, okay? It's the start of a reset. It's your career telling you that something needs to shift. And when you use the control your career process, you can figure out what's happening, why it matters, and what to do next. Remember that this isn't a one-time fix. It's a flexible process that you can come back to anytime that you hit a career roadblock. Whether you're feeling stalled, questioning your path, or you're ready for something new, these 5 stages are structured to give you something to sort through and to help you move forward. Okay, now for the announcement that I promised you. I'm writing a book. I am so excited to finally share this publicly. This book is going to walk you through the control your career process in detail and show you how to apply it to real career challenges. This season of the podcast is giving you a preview, but the book is going to go even deeper. I'm going to be sharing updates along the way, so make sure that you're following me on LinkedIn or on my email list so you don't miss anything. And if today's episode resonated with you, here are a few ways that you can take action now. 1, subscribe so that you don't miss the rest of the season. We're going to be tackling even more career challenges head on. Share this episode with somebody that you know who feels stuck and could use a roadmap that they customize for themselves. And if you want to go deeper, I have linked the values assessment, which is free, into the blog post for this episode so that you can at least start with something. So that could be one of the actions that you take first. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I can't wait to share more with you this season. Until next time, keep taking control of your career.